Hey friends, it's Unicorn, and today I have a maybe controversial video about an unpopular opinion of mine. That is to talk about why I don't like the three body problems and the whole series. Not so long ago, the series was adapted into a TV show on Netflix, and I just casually posted on Instagram story saying that I don't like the book, and a lot of people actually asked me why. And I briefly explained it a little bit on Instagram, but I've always wanted to make a video addressing that. It's not very timely because it's been a while already, but I still want to get my ideas out there. But before I start, I have disclaimers because I know that this book has a lot of hardcore fans. So first of all, this video is entirely my personal opinion, and it is my personal opinion only. It is to critique the books and the books only. If you like the book, I'm really happy for you. However, the book didn't work for me, and I really have a lot to say about that. So if you watch this video and you get mad at me, please don't come at me. I recommend you boba and taking a bath and some candles to soothe you. Just like, please know that this is my personal opinion. Secondly, I read these books in Chinese like 10 years ago, so I don't remember a lot of details, and I don't plan to torture myself to read it again. So I cannot provide you a lot of examples about the points that I'm based on. However, I did do some research and I have a limited amount of examples, but a lot of things are just my feelings towards these books. Lastly, you may know that the book Three Body Problem won the Hugo Awards. However, we have to make it clear that it is the English translated version that was judged by the Hugo Awards. I have heard that the translator Ken Liu actually did a brilliant job in translating this book and actually softened or even corrected some of the problems that I'm gonna talk about in this video. However, as I said, I didn't read the English translated version and I don't plan to ever. So if you are an English reader and you feel like some of the problem that I'm talking about here doesn't apply to the books that you read, maybe that is the reason, because translating can have some information lost in the process, and I only read the Chinese original version. So now let's talk about my opinions. So in short, my idea is, in order to be a good science fiction book, you have to be a good books first. There has to be enough literary values to support your scientific ideas or scope. This book or the series feels like a scientific ideology that dragged too long into 3 full books without the support of literature. And on top of that, there are so many problems. So now please let me elaborate on that. First of all, because it is a book, so let's talk about writing. And the writing about the book is just sad and bad, and there's no better words for it. Reading the books are like reading from a person who just started to learning to write. Part of the book is just so plain, and the other part of the book is just like adding so many excessive and unnecessary adjective to every single sentence. I struggled to finish even the first book, not to mention the whole series, but I had to at the time because I was hosting an in-person book club in China, so I have to know the books, know at least what the story was talking about, and it was an experience like hell. It was torturous. But like I said, it was so long ago, so I don't remember a lot of things, so I actually searched on the internet to find some examples so I can show you about the writing and what I'm talking about here. And I found a paragraph online where people are debating whether they like it or not, and I will read you some phrases from that paragraph, and we invite ChatGPT to translate it to you guys so you can get the idea of the writing. This is a fighting scene where a young woman died and her body was thrown by her enemies onto a gate and eventually stuck on the gate, and the enemies kept shooting bullets to the dead body. And they are 3 outstanding parts that I want to read you. The first is talking about after her body stuck on the gate. 那一瞬间，生命似乎又回到了那个柔软的躯体。It means in that moment, life seems to return to that soft body. Like, can you please explain to me what does life return to the soft body means? Like, if you want to say that bullets hit her body and her body moves as if she came back to life, you can just say that, but by adding soft in front of the body, it's just so unnecessary, and in this context, added a layer of male gaze to the young woman's body. And next, 她那春藤般的手臂时不时轻挥一下，仿佛拂去落在身上的雨滴。It translates to, Her spring vine-like arms could occasionally swing gently, and if brushing away raindrops that fallen upon her. So this person died, and she stuck on the gate, and her arms moved because of the bullies, and you call this swing gently? And also, what is spring vine-like arms? Like, after she died, the bones in her arms suddenly disappeared, and she just like became a soft flesh. Lastly, this girl eventually lost half of her scalp, half of her head, and she only had like one eye remaining. And the book says, 仅剩的一只美丽的眼睛仍然凝视着1967年的蓝天. It means the remaining beautiful eye still gazed upon the sky of 1967. The remaining beautiful eye. So she lost half of her head. And she only has like one eye, and she has so many bullies on her body. And the only eye that left has to be beautiful. And after I read this paragraph, my blood was boiling, and I thought, well, let's just read the first chapter of the first book to see if I can find any other examples of the bad, excessive adjective writing without so much male gaze, and this is what I found. So it's talking about a 15-year-old girl was killed. It says, 15岁少女的胸膛是那么柔嫩，那颗子弹穿过后基本没有减速。Means the chest of the 15-year-old girl was so tender and the bullet passed through with little to no deceleration. This is where I realized that the author is incapable of writing any female characters without male gaze and misogyny. I actually already know that, like, for the entire past 10 years, but this is where I remember that. But somehow, despite all the excessive adjectives, the writing style is still very, very bland. And this is not even talking about the character growth, because the characters has no growth, like zero growth. For all of the characters. All of them are playing one-sided and single-minded, and it's even worse if you are a female character. You may argue that this is because all of the characters have strong personalities. However, it is a problem if you only have one personality. And one personality only. Everyone in this book only has one strong personality and exaggerated to the entire book. It is not called personality, it is just flat. From the previous example, maybe you can tell that I cannot talk about this book without talking about misogyny because it is just in every aspect of the book. So let's just address the elephant in the room. This book, besides being a hardcore science fiction, it is also a male gaze fantasy. For all the people who are saying that a good science fiction doesn't need to have to be a good literary fiction, it can stand on the scientific hypothesis on its own. For example, three-body problems. I would have to break the news to you that this is not a book that stands solely on the scientific aspect. It also stands on misogyny. If the book could be one thing more than science fiction, it shouldn't be misogyny. In the previous examples, we already know that how the book was writing about female characters. On top of that, every female characters in this book are empty. They are all simple, kind, and innocent. They are young, they're skinny, they can be clever, but they cannot be smart. To say that they are examples of female stereotypes is to summarize the problems too easily. The female characters in this book, they may be professional, they may be scientists, but they all are very fragile and they have to be protected. They have to be guided. Protected and guided by whom? By the man in the book. By the single-minded man who always think about how soft the female bodies are. By the one-minded man who always feel like they have the responsibility to save the female characters, otherwise they will blow up the world. And there's just so many compulsory sexualities lens in this book that is impossible to count. Like, no matter what do you care about, no matter how successful you are as a scientist or other professions, you still needed to be loved and will be lost in love. Like, even Disney movies don't do that anymore. You know what drove me crazy? It is actually people can tell. People can distinguish the misogyny in this book, but because this book was translated from another language into English, so I've seen so many readers after reading the English version, they started to questioning themselves, questioning their reflections, and they're like, oh, is that misogyny or is that part of Chinese culture? And this broke my heart. It is of course not part of Chinese culture. It is misogyny no matter which languages it's written in. Stereotypes of women being soft, innocent, not logical, and overly emotional is a reflection of the author's limited understanding of women. It should not be excused just because it was translated from another culture. And same thing applies to the character development. A plain character is just a plain character. It should not be excused just because of the scientific ideologies of a book. To all of the person who's saying that this book doesn't need to have any or a lot of literary values just because it is such a brilliant scientific idea, I suggest you to maybe read more books. There are just so many books that are great on both science and literature. Anyhow, let's summarize why I don't like this book. Writing style, plain and dull, characters no growth and one-dimensional, and also misogyny and male gaze. And I have one more problem that comes with this book. It is, I feel like the huge success with this book is actually limited how overseas publishers choose and translate Chinese science fiction. Like in an ideal world, every book should have the equal chance to be translated and recognized if they are good. But in reality, promoting this book led publishers to seek out more similar or even equally problematic books to translate and ignore the other books that are different and have great potential. It's already happening. Promoting this book led to the translation of his other books, and a lot of non-Chinese readers started to think that misogyny is part of Chinese culture, blah, blah, blah. And it is just so sad to me. Living abroad for 10 years has taught me that even until today, it is very rare for books in Chinese to be translated just purely because it's a great book or it's very popular in China. It is actually because either the author has somewhat of a overseas connection or it was written by a famous dude. I'm not necessarily saying that it is a bad thing, however, I just want the publishers to be able to jump outside of their limitations and started to see and recognize more interesting Chinese science fiction because they do exist. And that's all my thoughts about why I don't like Three Body Problems as a book. It actually put me off of reading science fiction for like 10 years. I just started to slowly getting back to this genre this year. However, I feel like I need to take a break right now, so I hope you somewhat enjoyed this video. I almost never made a rant video like this, and I'm not sure how it will go. But yes, please let me know any of your thoughts about the topic that I was talking about or this book down below. Don't forget to say hi and thumbs up to this video if you liked it, if it was somehow entertaining to you. And I will see you in my next bookish video when I'm a little bit more calm. Stay healthy and stay safe. I'll see you. Bye!